What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and today's video is going to talk about Abomination and why he is the worst hero in Darkest Dungeon. There's a lot to this, and so when I say worst, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's unplayable or just outright, garbage or something, but he is the worst comparatively to everyone else. Before we get started, as always, if you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, leave your comments down below, and make sure you check out the box for all the social media stuff like Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon. Thank you so much for doing so, and now we will start talking about why A-Bomb is absolutely garbage. If this was old Darkest Dungeon, I would say the first reason is that he can't be taken with religious heroes, but that has since been patched out, although I still get comments about it, which is pretty trippy. But the first reason that Abomination is a bad character is that he is heavily trinkets reliance. This is not a weakness shared exclusively to Abomination, but honestly, for him specifically, it's worse than any other character, because his best trinket is Broken Key, and that is locked behind DLC. His next best trinket is Padlock of Transference, and if you can tell by the stats allocated by both of these, their stun chance and blight chance, that means that Abomination's best thing or best strategy is to be in human mode the entire time, which means that the best strategy for Abomination is to make him a stun bot for the entirety of his playthrough, and if you're looking for stuns, a lot of other characters have them. It also doesn't help that his very rare trinket, Restraining Padlock, is pretty bad just overall because of the stress mitigation not being as good as it should be. Number 2, his stun chance is below average on manacles. It is 10% under the average of 140, which is the max level based stun chance most heroes reach. Some get to 150, but Abomination sits at 130, further incentivizing that you need trinkets like Padlock of Transference or Broken Key in order for him to make good use of his stun. Number 3 is that Beast Bile hits very strange ranks. If you've heard me talk about other characters in the past that have cleaves that hit ranks 2 and 3, I usually cite them as the worst move on the bar. This applies to Flashing Daggers, this applies to Harvest, and of course Beast Bile as well. Although for Grave Robber I'd still say Toxin Trickery is worse, but Flashing Daggers is a very close second. The other reason is that Bile does very low damage and then scales into okay damage later on. The scaling on it doesn't match what other heroes get, where they get like maybe 2 points over the entire 5 ranks of upgrading the skill. For Beast Bile it starts at 2 and then immediately goes to 3 and then goes to 4 and then goes right up to 5. It's very strange, it's not a smooth power curve, which means it starts off pretty weak and then ends kinda strong. Number 4 is going to cover the next 3 points technically because you can really go in depth pretty hard on the skill, but that's Transformation. So Transformation for point 4 we're going to talk about is, it's not a great ability because to use it consistently, your party needs a dedicated stress healer. It would be fine if Abomination stressed himself out only every time he did it because you could just spam Absolution later and fix it, but for Transform to be used consistently, you need a stress healer just because you're going to be inflicting so much passive stress on your party that it's going to build up. For number 5, you cannot transform in high stress situations. That means you can't transform in Torchless, well maybe like once or twice, but honestly you're doing so much stress damage to your team it's not worth it. And then if you're in some kind of boss battle where stress is a huge issue, you cannot transform safely. There's the obvious amount of stress that you're inflicting to your entire party by doing this, but also there's the fact that when Abomination afflicts, if he's transformed, he goes back into human mode and you cannot transform again for the entire battle. I don't understand why this is how it works. You would think that afflicting means he should go human and can't go back, but what that means is if you're in a high stress battle, you're at like 70 stress or something, and you need to transform to get that extra damage, you can't. You have to wait until you get your stress back down to like 50 or 40, or you have to wait until he already afflicts or virtues so you can transform safely. So even though Transform gives you a lot of power up front and a self-heal, which are pretty nice, and some bonus speed, if you want to transform, you're always having to pay a price later. It's like you're trading tempo for the current, short term, and you have to pay it in the long term. So if you're going to transform in a fight, you get that big power spike, you kill the enemies in the next couple turns, you're gonna have to spend a couple turns using Absolution later, or using some kind of stress healer to get Abomination back under control. That was supposed to be point 6, but I just kind of segued into it naturally, so I guess we're just gonna move on from Transform. Number 7, or I guess the new number 6, however you want to look at it. I'm gonna keep it at number 7, but Abomination is a character who can use all of his skills at all times, which means that if you want to get the most out of this character, you have to pay a lot of gold to keep all of his skills up to date. Other heroes you can get away with running 4 or 5, sometimes 6 skills, But Abomination wants like 6 skills high level minimum. The only one you can kind of justify not leveling quickly is Slam, but even then I still wouldn't recommend it just because having that knockback and that bonus accuracy is pretty helpful if you have to move him. A couple of these skills you really do have to stay on top of too, such as Manacles, Beast Bile, and Absolution. The reason is because Abomination spends so much time in human form and his stun chance is lower than average that you need a stun chance boosted as high as you can, and you need those incremental boosts of Beast Bile for damage, and then the stress healing from Absolution is pretty nice too. And then afterwards you have to look at Rake, because that gets way stronger at rank 5 than it does at rank 1, and then Rage always needs accuracy, and then Transform gets really good stats. So really you have to get at least 6 skills constantly up to your current level in order for this character to feel as effective as he can be. The final reason Abomination is not a good character is because he has a movement skill that can't get him out of rank 4 even though he wants to be closer to the front of your party. Every other character in the game, with the exception of Man-at-Arms, has the ability to get out of rank 4. So we're talking about Breakthrough, Holy Lance, Duelist Advance, Lunge, all those types of things. For some reason those Slam can't get you out of rank 4. When you pair this with the fact that Abomination can only move forward 1 as a natural move skill, then he can't really do anything that's beneficial if he gets stuck in 4 besides Absolution. Now, is it necessarily bad that a character has a positional weakness? No, it's not. But for Abomination, his kit is already kind of a mess, and there's already things like the lowered stun chance and the weird scaling on Bile, all these other issues that he has, that if you could just let him slam out of rank 4 into rank 3, then that would be okay and that would mitigate some of the issues. It's not all doom and gloom with Abomination, by all means, even though I said he's the worst character in the game and I just spent 5 minutes explaining that. He does have some pretty good upsides and he's still worth using. Even though Manacles is a weak stun overall, he does have some pretty good base damage. He has the second highest base damage in the entire game, which means that if you hit someone with Manacles, it's going to hit decently hard and he can reach into rank 3 with it. Another great thing about Abomination is that he has 9 base speed at max level, which means he's another very quick stunner like Plague Doctor. His defenses are pretty solid too. He has almost 30 dodge and 46 HP at max level, which is pretty good, and then he has higher than normal Blight resist, and Blight is pretty damaging. Combine that with the fact that he can heal himself by transforming, as well as give himself speed and more damage, plus Absolution means he can take care of himself pretty reliably. Speaking of damage, like I said before, he has the second highest base damage in the game behind Leper, plus his crit buff is 20% bonus damage. That is pretty good, which means, for example, if you transform and then use Rake, you're not only getting the Rake scaling damage bonus plus the transform bonus, then if you get a crit, you're getting more bonus damage on top of that, which means Rake can hit pretty freaking hard. And that means it's one of the most ideal moves in the game for controlling anything that spawns consecutive adds like Shambler. Overall, Abomination is an interesting class. He does have some strengths, he just has some pretty huge drawbacks. Specifically, having one of his best trinkets, actually his best trinket entirely, locked behind a DLC paywall does suck pretty bad. But if you can get past those issues, you do have a self-sufficient unit that has access to a stun, and as I've said in previous videos, stuns win everywhere. Alright y'all, that's gonna do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Coming up next is the hidden stats guide. I need to sit down and record it. I've written most of it out, so it's just a matter of doing that. And then we have some other various guides coming up. I don't have them in front of me right now, but otherwise you'll know of them as they become more readily close to being completed. Yeah. So like I said before, that's it for this one. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, comments, check out the description box, all of that normal, awesome, super cool, fantastic stuff. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.